I can see myself. We're live. All right, we will call to order the October 3rd meeting of the Upper McCounty Board of Supervisors, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we get started, just a moment. For some of us, it is a pretty special, important day today, as it's a changing over of the new year. So I want to take a moment, a little bit of privilege for myself, for all of us to take a moment before we get started to reflect, embrace, acknowledge, appreciate, and just be in the moment before we get started with the business of today. All right, thank you for that. I appreciate it. We've done agenda item 1. We're on agenda item 2, which is additions, deletions to the agenda. I'm going to make a motion for an order issue on the agenda at item 6. I'd like to make a motion to switch order, have item B, ordinance 2024-08, be heard prior to ordinance 2024-07, which is listed as A. So the motion would be to switch the order of ordinance B and A as part of hearing. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
Any conversation or discussion? All in favor of changing the order, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Any other changes or additions to the agenda that we know? That we know of. Moving on to number 3, minutes and financials. I'm going to make a motion to dispense with the reading of the meeting minutes from the general business meeting held on September 5th, 2024, and approve as submitted, and authorize the payment of the bills for September 2024 in the amount of $2,364,882.23.
I'll second.
Thank you, Sonny. Motion's been made and second. Any conversation or discussion? Seeing none, we can move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as made, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you. We are quickly moving along to item number 4, which is presentations. We have a presentation from the Parks, Recs, and Open Space Plan from Simone Collins. Brian.
So I just wanted to take a moment to kind of set the stage here that Upper McCounty Township last adopted a comprehensive park rec and open space plan back in 2011. In May of 2024, we contracted with Simone Collins Landscape Architecture to provide consulting services to prepare a new comprehensive park rec and open space plan. The goal of this plan is to function as a guide to identify projected future growth within the township, determine park and rec system growth opportunities, evaluate if the township is efficiently and effectively managing its recreation programs and facilities, to both utilize best tax dollars and meet the needs of the community. Establish goals and objectives for the township park and rec departments, and identify steps to take to achieve these goals. Tonight we have Robert Gladfelder, project manager from Simone Collins, to give us a brief presentation of the process and where we're at.
Hello, members of the board. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to introduce you to the Comprehensive Park Recreation and Open Space Plan. I believe you all have the slides, or a copy of the slides, so I'm going to try to move through this very quickly. There's a lot of information here to unpack, but I'm going to try to get through quickly so I can answer any questions afterwards. Again, I am Rob Gladfelder. I am a registered landscape architect with Simone Collins Landscape Architecture. I'm part of this team. You may have met already Peter and Anita. They worked on the Vision Zero action plan, and Leonard from our staff is going to be here. And we're also joined by a certified park recreation professional, Derek Dorica. We have worked in this area. We do a lot of these types of open space plans. We wanted to highlight these couple because there's some that's really close. In fact, we're also doing another one with your neighbors of Allentown right now. This is our steering committee. They're going to help us navigate as we learn different information, provide guidance, insight, anything that we could do to help us as we go through the plan. So the biggest question is, why do we plan? Why particularly this plan? Parks are probably one of the most visible components that any government basically has. So we want to make sure that this looks at future growth, fast-growing township, and also quickly diverse. Are we making sure that these parks are going to accommodate new growth, people, everything else, also businesses and even visitors. This provide a guidance, hopefully for the next 10 to 20 years. Interesting enough, this comes at a great time because we did finish the BSAP. So we're looking at this, plus there's also plans going on with zoning revisions, reviewing them, and possibly an official map. Biggest question also is, what is this open space? So we can define open space as our parks that we typically usually see, but it's also our natural resources, where our water, steep slopes, marshes, areas that are really important. Look at the karst geology, our different types of things and elements that make up this township. And just look at all the different things that it does for the benefits, including air quality, water quality, financial benefits. We have a very busy schedule. We're here today, but we have a bunch of committee meetings, public meetings, different other meetings that we're going to be going through. And this is just a brief overview of our scope. We have a lot of different elements, a lot of different things that we do to bring this all together, to put together a plan. So at the end, we do have a plan. It's going to have all of our recommendations and also then have an implemented strategy and also some estimated costs that go through. We did have an opportunity. I'm going to go through this really quickly because we had a lot of fun, but we got to come in here with Dudley Township personnel to walk through, check out all the wonderful parks, both big, small, some having a lot of activities, different programming, some just having more passive recreation. But it's amazing to be able to talk to the personnel, find out what some of the challenges are, where some of the things are happening, just to see what everything looks like, what's the state of some of the equipment. There's just a lot of different things that are here, a lot of open fields, a lot of different spaces that are not being utilized, can be utilized in the future, different private recreation, such as Rodell. So we did get a good chance to go through. We also will be coming back again to visit. Both Derek and I will be coming back soon to go through some of these different parks and different things. And I did get a picture of it, but it was here for the ribbon cutting of the community center, which is really a big undertaking and really neat undertaking coming through. We also have a public opinion survey that's out now. This QR code came out in the newsletter. There's also a lot of cards that we've been handing out that has this QR code. This will be also in a lot of parks, so people can come in and take this. Right now, we're over 400 people, and we haven't even had our first public meeting, which is great to see because usually we see the biggest jump, especially after our first meeting. So that we got 400 people already making responses. It's really helpful. One of the things we thought we could bring out here is that people are already enjoying, what's going on within the park system. We have a lot of existing data, a lot of stuff that we got from when we were working with the BSAP. So we're going to be using, looking at these different connections, how these connections are going to connect to these open spaces. Can we improve on that? Also, we've got different things with, we're looking at the natural resources. We're starting to put that together. We're getting a lot of updated stuff from township engineers. We'll do some benchmarking. We'll be doing some other things, looking at different ordinances, little things that we can look at so we can help provide the plan. For our next steps, we got our next committee meeting coming up on the 10th. We have a public meeting coming up soon, and then we'll also be coming out to the National Night Out. We've already been to one event. Then we plan on being, I believe it's the New Year's Eve event that we're looking to come out to as well. This is our contact information. If you have any questions or anything else, or just comments and want to reach out to us, we really appreciate to have people come in and talk to us. Our phone lines are open. We want people to talk to us. With that, thank you for your time. If you have any questions or welcome any comments.
I had a couple questions. But you want to go? Anybody else want to go first? All right. Well, thank you. I was surprised to see the quarry there. I never really thought of that as a public park. Is there some thought about, what was the thought about putting that one in there?
Absolutely. There's plenty of precedents where quarries have been open to the public, being sometimes a restoration, sometimes having just a water access points. We have worked with one in Mercer County where we used a quarry and gave a plan of ways, ideas that it could be something maybe more of an educational, historical past or something like that. But it's also a great just access to water, something that you don't have much here in the township.
Is that open to the public now? I don't think it is, right?
It's part of Route 100 Park,
Yeah.
technically, but Scott uses the one, that's the North Quarries, Scott, for storage in the training center for the fire department.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in this township for a long time. I remember growing up as a kid, kids used to dive off that quarry and not come back out. So that's what scared me a little bit when I thought about that quarry. So I
It's
mean,
fenced.
it's fenced, yeah, but there was a time when fences don't stop some people. I mean, that was my concern from a safety perspective, or whether it was public access or whatever. Is this presentation is that also on YouTube? Can people see it, or is it?
On the website, Ryan, has this been posted? It has.
No, but on the YouTube, can they see it or no?
No.
No, they cannot. Okay, so we'll be on the website.
It's on the website. They can download it now.
All right. Okay, great. Yeah. All right. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay. No questions or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think that, am I right that the 4 public meetings that start on the 21st of this month, they all have a theme to them, right? There's a goal.
Yes, absolutely. The first public meeting will be much more of showing people some of the data that we're gathering, and then we're gathering ideas for them, or we'll be bringing up boards or stuff, and we just want to solicit anything. We always have a saying that every idea is listened to and respected. So even the grandest ideas, we always use this as something to say, like maybe if somebody says, I want a 50-foot water slide, we might not be able to do that, but it might lead to conversations, maybe looking at different ways that water might be coming into the park. But
We're not talking about public water parks or
Right,
pools,
right.
especially pools.
But this is
every
the
day.
idea again, just having people hear the voice, because all this stuff and opinions go into these plans.
No other questions from me. Does anyone in the public have questions for Mr. Gladfelter? All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time tonight. All right. And just as a reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, that presentation again is available on the website. And if you have trouble, you should reach out to Ryan. He can make sure that it's accessible in that regard. Hope I didn't volunteer you for too much there, Ryan. Section 5 is discussion and updates. It doesn't have anything on my agenda. Do we have anything to discuss or update? Seeing none, we can move on. We're to section 6, which is the ordinances. Per motion, we are working a little bit backwards on this. We're going to begin with ordinance 2024-08, amending chapter 10, part 2 with noise. Andrew.
Okay. This is ordinance is up for your consideration following last month's meeting wherein it was tabled with and certain discussion points were brought forward. I've incorporated those comments into this draft. The draft also has an optional provision related to grandfathering or nonconformities. The way that this was advertised and displayed was that there is a proposed section 10-203.4 related to commercial and industrial nonconformities, and that would apply to existing businesses would be entitled to continue to operate at the noise levels that are currently within the zoning ordinance. If there would be a change in occupancy, use, or intensity, meaning that there would be an addition of mechanical equipment or an installation or replacement of generators or compressors or vacuum pumps, that they would need to comply with the current or standards that are proposed in this ordinance. With your consideration, I would find it to be appropriate to have a motion whether or not to include the nonconformity or the grandfathering provisions in this ordinance, and then act on that, and then it would follow through with the adoption of the ordinance as a whole or in the entirety with or without the nonconformity grandfathering clause. Again, I believe that I've captured and not just me, we've reviewed it with staff as well, but the concerns that were expressed during the last month's meeting.
I have a couple of questions for you, Andrew, before we do a motion on it with regards to the grandfathering and the effect of doing a standalone ordinance that I want to make sure that we're clear of. If we do not have a grandfathering clause, but we have a business that's currently operating under the existing zoning in which they were approved under the old standards, what risk, if any, do we have of having that business litigate a right to exist under the zoning as opposed to the standalone ordinance numbers?
The risk would be of having them litigate under.
Successfully, I suppose. But if we cite somebody and they say, no, 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 I'm allowed to do 75 because I was admitted to do business here under the existing, on the ordinance and the zoning, but we've now changed it. Are we running a risk of having successful litigation against us for changing the standards while they're operating?
I think there is a risk there. I'm not certain if it's standard. And the other thing to consider is whether or not they would be in violation, because currently I don't believe there's any business operating that would be in violation of the proposed ordinance. But certainly there's a risk there. I can't tell you that, as you know, what the exact percentages would be as to the outcome of that litigation, but there is a risk here. I know that Prologis has representation here this evening to specifically discuss this part of the ordinance. So if, I'm sure they would be more inclined to discuss those risks and put themselves out there as to what their avenues would be to pursue. But I think one of their concerns is that the change in occupancy, if there's ABC company that's operating a business in a facility and XYZ company comes in and it's basically the exact same operation, this would be applied to say that they're going to need to now come in conformity with the ordinance. And the question is whether or not there really is a change of intensity or it's just a change in name, essentially. That's one of their concerns.
Okay, so if we have a grandfathering section in it and we don't necessarily have a change in occupancy, change in use, or change in mechanical equipment, we may have an issue with a new owner perhaps coming in, a new owner of the same business coming in and saying, I'm still exempt.
Correct. And what I attempted to do with this is, rather than having the township determine what levels everyone's operating at today or within 6 months from now, when this is supposed to be effective, is keep it at the levels where they are today, because no one's in violation today of these standards.
Okay. And with regards to the compliance monitoring, where it indicates that the township shall be entitled to pursue enforcement remedies, the township has ultimate discretion as to whether or not it wants to enforce the noise ordinance and the
That's
number.
correct. Yes.
And typically, in a legal sense, that discretion is afforded wide deference, so long as it's grounded in the health, safety, and welfare of the community.
I mean, I would think that would be the case. Yes.
And while I'm at the question, I want to follow up on something you asked, but I want to see if Bob from the township, can you confirm what Andrew said, that we don't currently have any record of anyone out of compliance of what would be the new 65 decibel level during the daytime hours?
Not from the readings we've taken from the request for service we received.
Okay. And from a compliance perspective, the way the grandfathering is written in the ordinance, the proposed ordinance, from an administrative perspective, do you have a sense that this would be more or less difficult for the township to enforce?
My concern with a grandfathering is what's baseline. Unless we go through the township and basically take a pre-reading, like what is it today, so that we have something to compare with. 6 months, a year, or 2 years from now, we're just kind of either hoping when there is a change of use or a change of equipment, they got a permit that would signal to us that there is a change. But otherwise, we basically have to build a database of what everyone's sound reading is today, which
Not,
is
not necessarily. The residents are going to be, the residents are going to be part of that. In other words, let's take, for example, we have a business that does have an outdoor piece of equipment, and one of the motor bearings begins to fail, and now it's screeching and making noise. Somebody's going to hear it. They're
Mhm.
going to make a complaint against that, and you're going to go out and measure it and say you got to remedy if it's over the 70, which would happen no matter what.
right. But that's not the same, Jim, as if someone replaces a piece of HVAC equipment. No permit, they just go and do it. We get a complaint now that that unit's louder. The business owner says it's been there at least 2 years prior to November, or this takes effect 6 months from now. What do I say?
And what's the decibel level?
It's following the grandfather provision. The louder decibel level. How do I know what the decibel reading was?
I'm not sure this is even, I mean,
I'm just saying, there's no 100% guarantee I can tell you who was legal in 2024 versus July of 2025, unless we go through and measure everybody.
first of all, for the last, I don't know, 3 years, we've had 12 complaints.
Understood.
Okay, so we're not. I mean, we've picked up 1 or 2 in the last week or so,
Mhm.
but this is a lot for something that I don't think is.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a motion pursuant to Andrew's advice. I'm going to make a motion that we approve ordinance 2024-08, but without the grandfathering section that's identified. I don't know on what page it is, but it's listed as section 4, commercial and industrial nonconformities. Andrew, for the purpose of drafting, do I need to be more specific, or is it okay to say a motion without the grandfather?
That's one of the options that's there. I think it's your motion is clear. And
I guess what I'll say is I'm going to make a motion that we approve ordinance 2024-08 without section 10203.4, which is the grandfathering section. Is there a
Correct.
second for that?
I'm got a question though, if I second it. I did find one other area where I have a question, so I'm going to open it up for discussion with that second. Is that okay?
That's what it's for.
All right, so I second.
Okay, so the motion's been made and seconded. Sonny, you have some questions?
Yeah, so, and I don't know, Andrew, if this was intentional or just accidental, but on the section that says specific acts constituting a noise disturbance, I think this is like the subjective portion. I had two questions. The first one's a little bit easier. You still have a reference to receiving property line on there, and I thought we had moved to originating property line.
Sonny, that's got to stay receiving.
that's intentional,
Okay,
because if these are specific acts and we don't need a noise level, I don't think that it's appropriate to, because that's their person of reasonable sensitivities. It should be impacting themselves at their property, not someone, walking down the street and stopping in front of a house that they don't live in or can't hear from their property and saying, that property's annoying me, I want them cited. It
Okay.
should be disturbing their peace and enjoyment of their particular property where they live.
all
So
right.
that was intentional.
I wasn't
on my
sure.
behalf.
That's why I was asking, because to me, I thought to myself, if they're taking a measurement at the originating line, and okay, maybe it's, for whatever reason, let's say it's acceptable, but it's still a reasonable person would consider it a disturbance. Do they now have to, a zoning officer now has to go to the receiving property line to take the measurement?
Yes.
Is that the intent?
Yes, yes.
All right.
You can't complain about someone mowing the grass 3 blocks over.
Yeah, no, I sort of get it. I just wanted to ask for clarification because I thought you were removing measurement points. So I'm okay with that one.
For the objective standard,
I
yes.
want to
but for the
understand it. That's
subjective,
why I
no.
asked it. Did you mean to do it, or is it?
That was intentional, yes.
All right. So the only other concern I had is that this objective is only limited towards 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I didn't understand that because, it could be noises that are happening during the day. People work at home. There's working moms. There's people that are retired. What was the thought about limiting it only to the nighttime hours?
Again, it relates to, people have a specific rights to utilize their property, and other people, peace of enjoyment. There's expectations of noise during the day. You're expecting people to be more active and more noise to be generated during the day than during the hours when people are sleeping. I think that there are some inconsistencies with some of the times. I think some of them started at 6, and we took out, I think, the snow removal aspect of that time frame when people could, maybe up early in the morning trying to use a snow blower to get themselves out of their driveway. So,
Sonny, if
intent-
somebody gets a new roof and the roofer comes out during the daylight hours, you're going to hear the air gun all day long, maybe 2 days if it's a larger house. I mean, they have to be able to run that equipment, and they might be violating it for the next door neighbor,
Yeah,
but yet, or they have a piece of equipment that has to excavate their
I get that.
water service or their sewer line lateral in the front.
Yeah, I get that. So there's going to be normal day. I mean, one of the things that did stick out to me was the operating and playing or permitting of radios, loud music. We've had a lot of loud music complaints. That was the one concern. That's right.
I mean, that's probably a question better for the police department. I think they generally,
What do you
when that
thought?
loud music.
And I have a strong opinion. That's just stuck out to me. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, I mean, I can't recall in all my years of anybody receiving a citation for loud music. It's typically handled by, there's been a complaint of noise.
Sure.
Turn your music down, please, and they comply.
To be honest with you, I would be disappointed if on any of the stuff that we had to go to a citation. I would really hope that whether it's an industrial property or a residential or whatever, it's handled through a conversation, right? But I just want to understand that. Okay. All right.
Satisfied?
I'm satisfied.
Jim, questions or concerns? No. Good. Okay. I've got none others. So let's open it up for public comment, I suppose. If you have a public comment regarding the, yes, sir, come on up.
Thank you. I read the ordinance. It was very
Hey,
well written. Thank
Do-
you.
Do me a favor and identify yourself. And
Oh, sorry,
All right.
Peter Ditzler, 7006 Lehigh Court. And after the last meeting, I did some research based on the comments from everybody here. And so I had 2 questions of just clarification of meeting, and then a couple of comments on section 10203. It talks about B, impulsive sounds versus correction of character, which talks about a continuous sound. Is it either an impulsive sound or not an impulsive sound? For instance, we have some sounds that are impulsive, which as described, we have some sounds that are continuous, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And then we have some sounds that are kind of in between. They might go for 4 or 5 hours continuously. And so how do we clarify or understand those different types?
without sounding coy, when you say they go on for 4 or 5 hours continuously, that becomes continuous sound. I think the
Okay.
intention of impulsive sound is a
That's what I
a
figured.
single bang
Yep.
as opposed to a series of bangs over a course of an hour or two.
Yeah. And then my next specific question, which I think I know the answer also, is under the specific acts. That I assume applies to residential and commercial and industrial.
Yes.
So then my comments after the last meeting, I did a little research and drove around the neighborhoods. At my house, I hear a continuous sound 24 hours a day, 365 days a year at about 45 to 48 dB. So I go out in my yard and there's never a sound of silence, as they say. And we have one round that we talked about, that continuous, that might go 4 or 5 hours. I don't know the frequency. It's say 55 dB. And then I drove around and I only found one other neighborhood that had the same problem, where it was a continuous sound, appeared to be 24/7. So that says a couple of things. On the one hand, there's not very many I shouldn't say violators. There's not very many sources of maybe dispute. But on the other hand, it's only 3 companies that I can identify that cause all the complaints. So then I got out the dB meter and I measured and got on the internet and done the calculations. And as some of the gentlemen, I think Robert alluded to, that there's nothing currently in violation, and that 65 dB limit would not correct any of the problems regardless of the grandfather clause. So that company will continue to send to the people that are complaining. I don't know what the other one, mine is 45 to 48, 24/7, 365 days a year, no sounds of silence. And so it kind of makes the whole grandfather, if it stays at that level, a moot point, because we'll still hear those noise forever in perpetuity. The next comment is the grandfather clause. As again, Mr. Robert pointed out, there's a practical matter of how do you catalog it and enforce it. And you know, you can say it's real, or you can say Jim doesn't think it's a problem. But as a practical matter, I don't know how you do it either. The second one, and more important, is regardless of, you know, whether we get sued or not, it's the tough luck. You know, is that tough luck for the residents, or is that tough luck for Prologis, a $115 billion corporation, causing noise into our neighborhoods 24 hours a day, 365 days a year? You can't go out in your backyard. And so if I could, in summary, if I could write the headlines tomorrow, the first one would be, resident asks, is this 2024 or 2000 or 1950? Are the businesses allowed to do this? And the second headline would be an invitation to the chairman of Prologis to come stand in the yards of people and tell us whether that's acceptable or not, to create those types of noises 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, I know you wanted to say something.
Was it everybody else?
Well, okay, we can go around. If you
Yeah,
want
go
to All right.
around the room.
Sorry, I'll go here and then I'll go to you, sir. Sorry. My apologies.
Hi, Denise Fantuzzi. I live at 1117 Deer Run. I guess I have 2 questions. One is the impulsive sounds. And you give an example of discharge of firearms. I was just wondering, is there any specification around, like you say, if it was happening for going consistently for 5 hours, it would be continuous. Let's say somebody's shooting off a gun every hour on the hour. at what point does that, get handled a different way? I'm just looking at some of the language here and I'm thinking that it may not be clear enough or specific enough for some.
There's always going to,
situations.
no matter how we draft it, Denise, there's always going to be some situation that we can imagine that would fit within the gray spot. So what I would encourage you, especially if you hear a gunshot every hour
the
on the
police.
hour, call the police. If it's a gunshot, call the police first. But if you're hearing a noise that you think violates the ordinance, what we're trying to give to you is the right to call code enforcement in the township, have the complaint registered, put it to the code enforcement officer to make a judgment. And if you disagree with that judgment, you can have a conversation with her about that.
Secondly, as far as the grandfather clause goes, I'm a little hard pressed to think that we would do that and add that, because the idea would be that we are creating a two-tiered system then in terms of the rules and regulations. And I do think that it opens up more of a can of worms in that you've got a level that some people, you say, are not currently even at the newer level, but let's say new equipment or even aged equipment is going on. Now they're able to be at a higher level. I thought the whole idea of this noise ordinance was a public health issue. And I think that if we're going to be consistent in our community, that everyone should be treated by the same rules. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't give the businesses adequate time to come into compliance with the new ordinance at 60 and 65. But I think that putting in a two-tiered system could open up other new people coming in and saying, well, why do I have to adhere to this? I'm in a similar business as this guy down the road, and he's not held to this level. So there's always going to be a possibility of complaint. And I think if you give businesses adequate time to come into compliance, it would be reasonable. And then everyone would be treated the same. So I think most people can feel that, when you have two different sets of rules that are applied to similar groups, it doesn't work very well. And I think that if there's any exception, or if there's a real hardship for any given business that cannot come into compliance after 6 months or a year of opportunity to do so, and they have some tremendous hardship, they can always petition for an exception. There are always exceptions that could be given on a one, case-by-case basis. So I just feel that is unnecessary, having that grandfather clause in there. I think it kind of guts the whole purpose of coming down to a level that is a public health situation that we're trying to give our community more peace and quiet, really.
Thank you, Denise. Just to be clear, so that maybe we can keep conversation in an efficient way. The motion on the table is to adopt 2024-08 without the grandfathering clause. So the motion on the table is to not have it already. So if your primary issue is the grandfathering clause, we've heard you. Gentleman in the back in the suit.
Good evening, folks. Greg Davis with the Saul Ewing Law Firm. I work for Prologis. I am not their CEO. Couple of things that I wanted to bring up tonight. The first, I guess, relates to the grandfathering. And I thought what I heard, my colleague was here last time, so I'm sort of pinch hitting for him tonight. What I thought I heard from the last meeting was that there was some support for a grandfathering proposition.
There was conversation about it, and that's why we put it in, so that,
Okay.
because the previous draft of the ordinance did not have it.
Not true. There was some support.
There was some support. I agree.
Okay, so
We had the conversation to put it in so that we could have an idea of what it looked like.
Have local businesses been given the opportunity to do their own sound readings in advance of the adoption of this ordinance? And the reason I ask that is because I know I've heard tonight that the township has gone out and done sound readings, but what if, for example, the township happened to be out there at a time that was particularly quiet on the site? I don't know what that looks like. For business to business, I'm sure it varies, but why not give the businesses the opportunity to do their own sound reading so they could report back to you and say, hey, you're trying to impose a 65 dB limit. We're at 70 every day. When you came out and took your reading, it just must have been a different time of day.
Right.
When we were particularly
So
quiet.
the readings that we've done have been in response to a complaint. We don't have we don't have the staff or the manpower right now to go out and measure everywhere just for giggles. We've also had this noise conversation since March. This is now the third public hearing we've had on draft ordinances in a workshop regarding that. The way this ordinance is currently drafted, it doesn't go into effect. If we pass it tonight, the effective date is 6 months from tonight. So there is time built into the process here for organizations to do that. Plus,
I'm sorry.
within the body of the ordinance itself, if a complaint is made, there's a mediation mitigation allowance within the body of the ordinance for the township, the complaining party, and if it's a business, to have a conversation and engage in efforts to see if we can fix some things before a violation is noted.
I guess my only response to that is that if the conversation began in March, it's not going to go into effect for another 6 months. Maybe another month wouldn't kill anybody to allow, again, give the opportunity. I don't know that anybody's thought about this. Again, this is yesterday was the first time I even really had any meaningful conversation about this. But I would love, for example, to have the opportunity with the Prologis folks to say, hey, you might want to go out at your property lines and take some readings, maybe at the busiest time of day, noisiest time of day, and find out what that looks like. So to the extent that they're they're over the 65 proposed, they can come and report that. I don't know if that is a needle mover, that's a game changer for you all, but I'm sure they'd like the opportunity to do that.
And that's why we moved it from a 5-day effective period, which it was the last draft when Dan was here, to a 6-month. That's the current draft.
Right, but your voting on it won't be 6 months from now. It will just take effect.
It'll be
6 months
taking effect 6
Right.
months from now.
So if we do readings a month from now, the ordinance is still going. It's predetermined to take effect 5 months from that.
Understood. I can also tell you there's been a lot of work on this noise ordinance, and delaying another month is
Andrew already told me. I know.
not something that is high on our priority list.
Understood. I understand that. The only other issue, so that's grandfathering on a shelf for a minute, the specific acts constituting a noise disturbance. That generated a lot of conversation tonight. That provision states that a violation of the noise ordinance occurs if one of those listed items occurs and someone complains about it. That's it. There are no objective standards anywhere. That person has to be reasonable. That's not an objective standard. And that of normal sensibility is not an objective standard. How do you enforce that? Wouldn't you want, if I were the township, that's going to be an enforcement nightmare.
Well, we have gone back and forth a number of times. Again, this being the third, maybe even the fourth time we've had a conversation about it. The reason that we have the decibel standard and the objective part is to have a clear, concise measurement. But if you look at the specific acts constituting noise disturbance, which we'll call the subjective part, not only is it a reasonable person of normal sensibilities, but it lists 5 things, none of which are operating a warehouse. It's all about neighbor to neighbor, about music,
Loading and unloading is in there.
but it's also between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m.
Correct.
Which, if we've got loading and unloading that late, it should be done under a quieter level so as to not disturb neighbors who are sleeping around them.
Understood. But you already have established objective standards, day and night, for commercial industrial properties, for residential properties. They already exist in the ordinance. This is supplementing that and giving somebody the opportunity to lodge a complaint and to hold somebody accountable, or a business accountable to pay fines because someone complained.
And
Not
again,
because you were violating any objective standard.
and understood, processed. It's also something that will have a code enforcement official whose responsibility to do that. And we also have built in within the ordinance a process by which the complaining party, the business in this case, and the township will all sit down together and try to work out a reasonable solution before it becomes, it's not a violation until it's determined to be a violation.
Understood. Yeah. My last point on that is that, as I think about the enforcement issue, if Mr. Smith complains one time and there are objective standards that are enforced, the code enforcement person comes out and says, sorry, they're entitled to be at X dB, 50 dB. It's only 25. Mr. Jones probably isn't calling over and over and over again because he knows it was half the allowable dB. But if that's irrelevant, he's at 22, at 18. It's bothering me. And I'm a person of normal sensibilities. I think something should be done about it. That's going to happen over and over, or at least you're leaving open the possibility for that happening over and over again.
And we've got a code enforcement officer who's been well versed on that and understands how to deal with those situations and rule in the way that makes sense.
Okay.
And just for the board's knowledge, that the person of reasonable sensitivities, that standard has been argued before the Supreme Court, I believe, or definitely appellate courts, and has been found to be an acceptable standard. I think if you get before a fact finder or a judge and they hear the facts, it's up to them to determine whether or not that person has reasonable sensitivities or is a normal person of reasonable sensitivities. Also would expect that the township, if they're getting, one complaint in a neighborhood of 400 houses, that's kind of an outlier there. And that's the way I would recommend that be enforced. Lastly, we still have the opportunity to, talk to the property owner and try to work out a solution before taking him to us for a citation.
Which again is in the discretion of the township at that
Right.
point.
I appreciate you all hearing me.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Mr. Davis. Anyone else from the community? Yes, sir.
Jim Caffrey, 318 McBride. Excuse me. I support that you do not grandfather, and I appreciate that. And what this gentleman said about it being a nightmare, I've been at every one of these meetings and I've said it'll be a nightmare. But I said it was a nightmare because you're strictly using DB. And I go back to what the gentleman said here with the 24/7, 365. And people of normal sensibilities, I didn't realize it. This has been in front of the Supreme Court or appellate courts or whatever. Those are the kind of things that can be addressed, and that's not. And I always forget which is the cumulative, which is the number, which is the more objective. But the one question I'd ask, and I understand the gentleman is not the CEO of Prologis; he's one of their attorneys, and perhaps he can't answer this question. If this gentleman has contacted Prologis, has Prologis gone out there? And what are they going to do about it? We shouldn't have to enforce something like this. These companies should be willing to do whatever they can within reason. The lady made a good point. Within reason, we've done this, this, and this. And it's reasonable. And there has to be some cost associated with that, which is reasonable. So, again, something I'll say it again, the DB is what's a nightmare. And, if I could just ask one more question I asked last month to repeat. There was a lady here who talked about neighbors and boom boxes. And there was a gentleman who talked about vibrations from a company 24 hours a day inside their houses. And I asked the question, does this potentially solve those problems? Now, last month I got maybe. Is that still the answer? Maybe?
Boom boxes are difficult, Jim, because once the complaint is made, by the time we evaluate, as Mike talked
I
about,
understand. I understand.
it often may have solved itself.
Don't
Right?
envy the police. But
Right. The continuous vibrating sound, if it's a problem, we'll have the code enforcement out there to see what can be done under the ordinance, and then see if a conversation can be happening and see if we can replicate it. That's the best answer I can give you. There's no guarantees of what's going to
But
happen.
it's something that, in here, it can be.
Make a complaint, and we'll see what we can do.
That's all anyone can ask for. And I'd ask that gentleman, is Prologis agreeable to going out and meeting with this man and his neighbors and finding out what they can do? There's got to be something they can do in 2024.
Jim,
See if he'll answer that question.
we codified that request. It's in the ordinance now that when a complaint is made like that, if Pete wants to come out and make a complaint, Peter, I don't mean to offend you. If Pete wants to make the complaint, part of the process is we call, if it's against Prologis or if it's against me, everyone gets together and has a conversation. That's what's in the ordinance now. So we are the Good Neighbor Coalition that did that as part of a process years ago has now been codified, which I think is important.
Well,
We're trying to make better neighbors out of everybody.
I appreciate it. And again, I support not having the grandfather in.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Jim?
And if I can just point out one point of discussion that occurred, I think last month, is last month, the ordinance did not have the grandfathering provision in it. And I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the effective date is 6 months from the date of adoption. And I believe that was created so that these companies could go out and take measurements on their own and not put the burden on the township to go out there. And if they are not in compliance, it gives them opportunity to bring themselves into compliance. I believe that was some of the discussions and rationale behind the 6-month effective date.
I'm not sure, but I mean, I think we can make that motion now, right?
It's in there already.
It's already in there. Okay, so it's fine.
I've called you 3 times. Fourth will work.
So this is obviously near and dear to at least a portion of the residents in terms of noise. I want to say a couple of things. If you were to go in my backyard, and I'm sure it's right now, in fact, if you would go outside that door and stand on the vestibule, the road noise that's going by here is probably in the 40 dB range, and it's 24/7. And those people on the hill hear it 24/7. So it's not uncommon for any of us to have to deal with that. Okay, and a lot of that is if complete peace and quiet is what somebody's looking for, I, I, is that reasonable? Number one. The second thing is I really don't think it's fair to all of the businesses. I mean, I'm here for the public. That's why I was elected. That's why 10 years ago I took the office, was to listen to the people and try and do what's best. But what we need to remember as a resident is at the end of the day, the Prologis individuals like Prologis have every bit as right of a right as we do. And they are, whether we like it or not, funding the majority of the township. I'm not saying that gives them more right than you do, but they have a consideration. And I think that we're not being fair to them right now. 6 months. Budgeting doesn't even go 6 months. Most of these companies can't get something done in 6 months. So you're going to turn this loose on them in 6 months? That's fair? The fact that you're changing it on them, I don't think is fair. I don't. And if we have specific issues with specific people, I think there's a different way to deal with it than change an entire blanket and take a large spray and spray it all over. I do. I don't think that that's fair. So I am not happy. I'm not saying that there aren't issues in small cases, because they are, but I think the way that we're dealing with this really isn't fair. And I think that the businesses are owed as much of a voice as the residents. Now, you guys can be upset at me for that, but I sit up here and I look at the budget and I see how much money we spend, and I see that 2.6 million comes from the residents. The other 50 we're going to spend this year, where do you think it's coming from? Besides grants, besides higher levels of, so they have a right here as well. That's all I'm saying. They have a right here as well. So I'm a bit upset that we're here and talking about some of this. I do think that as a business owner, if I'm in this community, I probably will not be anywhere near as in tune to what's happening at this level than the residents. They probably do not know that. I'm almost positive that Prologis is one of the few businesses in this township, or owners of properties in this township that have businesses within them that even know this is going on. Is that right? Should they have the ability to say something? Do you think it's fair? Just saying. That's where I'm coming from. So when I vote nay, you guys understand where I'm coming from. That's
Anything else? Sonny? Only if you need to.
I don't think I have anything yet.
Okay. With that, we'll call question and move to a vote. So all those in favor of passing ordinance 2024-08 without section 10-203.4, which is the grandfathering section, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
nay.
Nay. Passes 2-1. Thank you. We're now going to move on to ordinance A, oddly, which is 2024-07, amending chapter 27, part 5 by repealing section 17508 noise. Andrew?
Yes, thank you. Again, this is, I'm not certain if this was even brought up on the agenda last month, but it was on for consideration, but it was on last month's agenda. And what this ordinance does is the current noise standards are within the zoning ordinance. And since the adoption just now of 2024-08 as a standalone ordinance, it's appropriate to remove the provisions related to noise from the zoning ordinance. I will note that this ordinance contemplates, it doesn't have a specific effective date, and by law, ordinances are effective 5 days after adoption. So to coincide with 2024-08, I would recommend, and I believe would be a friendly amendment to this, to have a motion to adopt this conditioned upon the effective date being in conjunction with the standalone ordinance being 6 months.
Anybody else want to make the motion? You want to leave it to me?
You're doing good so far.
I'm going to make a motion to motion to approve ordinance 2024-07 with the friendly amendment to section 3 effective date indicating that this ordinance shall become effective 6 months following adoption. Is there a second?
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Jim?
I think you know what I'm going to vote.
Yep. Sonny?
No.
I do have one, just want to make one comment that a public hearing was held on this matter last month at the beginning of the meeting. And at that point in time, there was no comment letter received from the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. We have since received their comment letter, which essentially stated it's a matter of local concern, and they generally had no comment.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions or concerns from the public comment on the repealing ordinance? I see you shaking your head. I'm going to follow you on that one. All right. With no comment, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of ordinance 2024-07 with the friendly amendment to section 3, making the effective date 6 months following adoption, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
It passes 2-1. Thank you. We can move on from noise for a little while at least. We are up to resolutions. Resolution A, Resolution 2024-41, docket 2084A, Lehigh Hills waiver request. Cal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This project previously received approval and has been under construction. And it has been discovered that there has been the installation of UGI utility lines in an area which conflict with the planned curb. A familiar face is back with us tonight. Darren is filling in for Dave, so I'll let Darren give you a little bit of the engineering.
So the ordinance requires a curbed roadway. That was a part of the originally approved plan. This is Lehigh Hills development. During construction, as Cal already pointed out, a gas line was installed where the curb line should be. The applicant has asked for a waiver of that curbing. The main purpose of the curbing in this section was to control and channelize stormwater. So they were able to demonstrate they were able to capture the stormwater in inlets and not create any runoff issues. So the Planning Commission has made a recommendation favorably on this waiver request. We have no engineering objections to this either.
Are there any sidewalks on this side, either now or part of the Vision Zero?
Part of the Vision Zero, or there's no sidewalks right now. This
Yeah.
was a part of the sidewalk that was waived originally.
Oh, even it was waived before?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-41, granting approval of one waiver to docket 2084A, Lehigh Hills Lot 5, Phase 2, conditioned upon the Township Engineering Review Letter dated September 13th, 2024. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Jim, any questions or concerns?
Nope.
Sonny,
No.
any questions or concerns from the audience regarding this? Perfect. I'm going to move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as made signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Cal.
You're welcome.
Resolution B, 2024-42, docket 2299, Hidden Meadows, Phase 3, 600. Is that Warley Road?
Worley,
I thought Worley didn't have that extra E in it.
it's reversed. There's a typo.
It's a typo in two different things. I was confused about that. Worley Road, waiver request. Cal, sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This again is another waiver request for a development that is already in progress. And this relates to the backfilling of roadways. And again, I'll let Darren speak.
So the applicant is requesting a waiver for the period of time in which compacted subbase can rest with utilities installed. The applicant proposes proof rolling to assess the subgrade in that area. This is typical. We are recommending that a maintenance bond be provided for that 18-month maintenance bond be provided, or security in the name of the HOA. Since it is a private road, it will need to meet public standards. Again, the Planning Commission has reviewed and made a favorable recommendation on this. We have no engineering objection. We would just like to obviously be present during the proof rolling.
I guess I'll keep going. I'll make a motion to adopt 2024-42, docket 2299, Hidden Meadows, Phase 2, granting approval of one waiver to docket 2299, conditioned upon the Township Engineer Review Letter dated September 13th, 2024, with the additional condition that the applicant provide an 18-month maintenance bond or maintenance security with the proposed homeowners association. Is there a second? Anyone?
Can I ask a question before I make the second?
I'd rather you not, since technically we have to open the
I'll
motion.
second it.
Thank you,
You go
Jim.
ahead. Thank you.
Sonny, you have a question?
Yeah, so I was a little confused by the briefing, so I want to ask for clarification. We've done this before, but was it for the same developer or the same project or some?
To my recollection, I don't remember granting or have you folks granting this waiver in the past.
I do recall it being,
It was a different development.
it was a different
It was
development?
Parkland Crossing.
Okay, and how did that turn out? That it was okay?
Mhm.
All right, that was my only question, so.
Jim, any questions or concerns?
No, sir.
Any questions or concerns from the audience? Seeing none, we can move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion is made, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes. Thank you, Cal. Thank you,
Thank you.
Darren.
Thank you.
Resolution C, 2024-43, granting a right-of-way public utility easement to PPL for Route 100 Park. Cal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may recall that you've heard something regarding this twice already. This is the third request for a public utility easement. PPL is underway installing their new overhead lines up on the southern end of the Route 100 Park. They've discovered that they have to add an additional pole to the system. And so this easement just allows that pole and the appropriate tree trimming or removal to get the pole in place. And staff is in favor of this.
And we've done this twice already for them. They just keep coming back because they keep
Changes.
they keep not anticipating.
Correct.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-43, granting a right-of-way public utility easement to PPL Electric Utilities Corporation for the installation of one pole and one anchor guy. That's lovely. And overhead facilities at 1423 North PA Route 100, and authorizing the township manager to sign all documents related to such grant. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Sonny. Questions or concerns?
No, sir.
None.
Anybody in the audience got a third?
Mike Szynski, Russet Road. Will this create any prevent us from doing anything with our parks as a result of granting?
No, it will not.
It will not.
It will
Okay,
not.
so it doesn't encumber us as parks and
Correct.
recreation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, we can move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as stated signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That passes. Thank you, Cal. Thank you, Darren. Actually, Darren, you had nothing to do with that one.
Absolutely not.
I revoke my thank you. We've moved to section 7, the motions. Motion A, awarding the bid for a secondary winter road salt provider. Scott,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Every year we get a second alternate salt provider. This year it would be, I would like a motion to award to Eastern Salt Company, Inc. at the cost of $81.50 per ton delivered to our site.
anybody else want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to award the alternate winter salt supplier bid to Eastern Salt Company, Inc. at a cost of $81.50 per ton delivered.
I'll second that. Questions or concerns to Scott now that he's officially open for questions and concerns? Sonny, Jim,
No, sir.
anyone from the audience care to ask a question about our secondary salt provider?
Just at the same cost or different cost? Okay.
Same cost last year, it's actually lower than our state contract.
Okay, good job.
No other questions. We can move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as made signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Congratulations, Scott. You have a secondary salt provider. But just you. Motion B, appointing members to the Park Rec and Open Space Plan Steering Committee. Ryan.
So this is just a housekeeping measure to officially put this on the record. The individuals listed above were selected by township staff in collaboration with our consultants to participate in the steering committee for the Park Rec Open Space Master Plan. They've all completed their statement of interest for appointments to boards, commissions, and committees, and are all within good standing with the township at this time. We recommend that the Board of Supervisors approves as written.
I'll read this one. I'm going to make a motion to appoint the following individuals to the Comprehensive Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan Steering Committee: Ray Baraniak, Thomas Mayle, Yvonne Schweikart, Lori Clement, Abigail Pasterski, John Sarator, Karen Fitzpatrick, Bradley Reese, Mike Sosinski, Pete Graziak, Jorge Romero, and Jennifer Thomas. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Questions or concerns, Jim?
Nope.
Sonny?
Nope.
Anybody other than Mike want to ask questions about himself on this committee? Seeing none, we can move to a vote. All those in favor of the names and the motion as made signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. I just want to add thank you for those people that are volunteering and participating in the process. We appreciate it.
Well said. Moving to motion C, authorizing staff to proceed with an update to the saldo and schedule a public hearing. Cal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we're all aware of, we've been working through a significant zoning rewrite, which we're anticipating to be done early next year. And then following after that is going to be a significant saldo update as well. In the meantime, there are a number of items that we would like to update in the saldo that are pretty easy to do. So we would like to complete an interim update. A couple of those items are primarily incorporating the Vision Zero action plan items into the saldo, as well as some updates to our stormwater requirements, some woodland preservation section items, some minor plan section items, so administrative. So we would requesting that the board authorize us to proceed to draft that and to schedule a public hearing for Thursday, December 5th at 7 p.m., the start of the December board meeting.
I'll make a motion to authorize township staff to proceed with an update to the township's saldo ordinance is repetitive, saldo, and schedule a public hearing for Thursday, December 5th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Questions or concerns? Sonny?
No, all my questions were answered.
Jim?
I'm good.
Anybody in the audience have any questions about the minor saldo review and update hearing on December 5th? You can ask them on December 5th. We'll move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as made signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Sonny?
Aye. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. Any opposed? It passes.
It
Thank you.
zoned out a little bit.
I noticed.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Cal.
Thank
We're up to the board and staff reports. The monthly department reports are available in the back of the room and have been posted on the township website. Rather than, I'm going to ask a couple of pointed questions before we get to the walk around. Scott, do you want to give us a quick update on the Cabrick Rain Garden that we discussed last month, please?
Yes, it was seeded. We finally got some rain, so it really came in nice. It greened up today. Early last week, I met with the engineer about the water standing there. And he is okay with us taking that stone out and digging down to the under drains and extending the under drains further. So that way we can drain that. He is okay with us replacing that pipe. That pipe was rusted, so he's okay with us extending that out and also lowering the inlet down further. So it could be flush with the ground, so it'll take any kind of water away, that there's no standing water down below.
And you're in some conversations with the local residents about some plantings, yeah?
Yes, I talked to Mr. Basako this afternoon. He's going to talk to his other neighbor, and I'm going to meet with them hopefully within the next 2 weeks about tree plantings around behind their houses. He actually would like to see some open because he does like the cedar park. So I like to, meet with them, see what they like, and try to work with them to make it, everybody gets happy.
So we're in a collaborative process with the homeowners about plantings around the rain garden, yeah?
Yes.
Perfect. Any other comments from the Public Works Department while we got you?
No.
Didn't expect. We'll move to RAC. Ryan, do you want to give us a quick update on the Caybrook Russet Park playground installation that we discussed last month as well?
Most of the installation has been complete, including the safety surfacing with mulch and some added amenities. We obviously have removed a lot of rock from Grange Park, so Scott had the idea to add some natural elements to the playground area as well, which is kind of a cool feature to tie in areas of the park. We are awaiting 2 park benches to arrive to be installed, and one of the basket swings was delayed and needs to be installed as well. Working with Jim Stolzis, we will put the final inspections on it to sign off that it's all ready to go and safe, and then we'll be opening it up.
Okay. And while we got you on the microphone, Ryan, what other exciting developments can we anticipate from the Parks and Rec Department?
So obviously, a couple weeks ago, we did have the groundbreaking ceremony for the Community Lifestyle Center, which was very well attended. Great weather, great opportunity to showcase what's going to be coming. Also, just yesterday, we were able to watch the cement trucks pour the first footer on site. So keep an eye out for photos and videos to be updated to the website shortly. Back on September 13th, we had our fire department appreciation movie night, which is very well attended at Grange Park. Approximately over 500 people for that event on a Friday night in the fall here in this area is a great turnout. The next day, while we did have pickleball, we did something even better. We had a Miller Keystone blood drive here at the Township Center where 10 individuals had appointments, and the amount of blood collected, it can save approximately 30 lives. So that's something to be proud of here at the Township, and a partnership we'll continue to work with Miller Keystone on. Upcoming, we have Barktoberfest this weekend. We have over 50 vendors signed up, ability courses and demonstrations and canine performances with our Upper McCounty Township Police Department as well. So we're very excited for that event. We also have our trunk or treat on the 18th of October. It's a trunk or treat and movie night at Lone Lane Park. Currently have 39 vendors set up with inflatables, interactive characters, and a movie in the park as well. So I have seen some other townships and some other entities have their trunk or treat that day, but I know everyone's going to be coming to ours based on how well Emily and team did last year. Robert did mention we had over 400 responses to our public survey. I will say their presentation is about a week old. We're over 522 as of this afternoon. So we are getting a lot of public input into that process. And lastly, we were awarded a Tree Pennsylvania Environmental Justice Forest Grant to plant 60 trees in a specific area of the township, which is Bryansville Park, valued at $7,200. So we'll be working with Tree Pennsylvania and our Public Works Department to get those planted in early spring next year.
Thank you. Bruce.
So wait, one second, Ryan.
Sorry.
Just one second, I have one question. So I just want to also shout out that you are now a radio star because I listened to your online. Actually, it's on WDIY you were on, but if you haven't heard it, you can also listen by podcasts. It gave a good update on the community center there.
All right. Bruce, anything from the finance department?
Yeah, sure. This is the highlight coming up in October. We're having we have 3 budget workshops scheduled: the 8th, the 15th, and the 22nd of October in this room from 5 to 7. It's open to the public, so please come out and hear what our budget's all about.
And new this year, they're being streamed live and in person, aren't they?
Yes.
Isn't that exciting?
It's gonna be my last one.
Makes it even more exciting. We'll bring you a cupcake. So that's the 8th, the 15th, and the 22nd, the next 3 successive Tuesdays for budget hearings, starting at 5 o'clock in the main meeting room. They'll be online as well via our YouTube link. Thank you, Bruce.
I'll bring the bourbon, you bring the shot glasses. We'll kick you off, okay?
Thank you, Chief.
After we talk about the budget, not
And
before.
that won't be on YouTube.
It might be. Chief Christ.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a good time for me to remind everybody that next week is Fire Prevention Week. It's a good time to check your smoke alarms, test your smoke alarms, replace them if they're older than 10 years old, and also check your fire extinguishers.
Chief Satowski.
Yes, a couple things. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to recognize Officer David Fritsch. He just completed 3 weeks of intensive training to become a drug recognition expert. He marks our third in the department that we have, which is a positive thing. It goes to show the commitment that we have to keeping our roadways as safe as they can be. Also, in a couple weeks, we'll be starting our No Shave November a little early this year. We'll be donating to the Hydrocephalus Association. You can watch there'll be a GoFundMe set up on our Facebook page that will advertise if anybody wishes to donate to our cause. That'll run through January. And join us October 20th for our National Night Out that had to be postponed. It's from 2 to 6. If you haven't been there, I'm sorry, you're missing a great time. It's always well attended. There's a car show, there's rides and food trucks and canine demonstrations. The fire department will be there. Lots of vendors and informational booths. So please, it's a Sunday, 2 to 6. It's the first time that it's on a weekend. It's typically the first Tuesday on August. Due to the rain delay weather, it's postponed. So we're hoping for a better turnout on a weekend. That's all. Thank you.
So 2 things. One, Carla Colangelo, if you're listening, thank you for texting me. Yes, National Night Out is on the 20th. You can continue, even though she says it may be a problem on the website. So I guess we should check to see if it's on the website still. Second, Chief, you mentioned something about roadway safety. We got a complaint this past month about some trucks parking and some potentially modified Jake brake use at the intersection of Route 100 and 222. Is it possible for us to send a little bit more of a careful patrol out to that area? Maybe sit and listen with the guys that we have trained to check the modified Jake brakes to see if we can rustle up some support to those residents.
Sure,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you very much. Anything from admin?
I have nothing.
Anything on that side, legal or
I do.
jazz?
Yes.
Yes, she
Thank you,
does.
Mr. Chairman. I would like to announce that there was an executive session held tonight, and the topic was legal matters and personnel. I would also like to encourage everyone to continue to subscribe to the electronic newsletters on the website. There's going to be some exciting news that will be coming out. So if you want to be the first to know, you should click that link and be part of the community that are the first to know. Other than that, if there is any issues that you're having with the website, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll help you to the best of my capacity.
Thank you, Jazz. Cal, Andrew, Darren?
No.
Jim, you got anything? Sonny, you got anything?
No.
I have one thing. The next time that we meet will be November 7th, and between now and then is your opportunity as a citizen of the United States to vote. Please make sure that you get out, make sure you vote for what speaks to your conscience. Representative democracy does not work without you. Without that, I would make and by the way, for all those concerned about a lengthy meeting tonight, an hour and 19 minutes.
Do we public comment? Are you just?
No,
gonna
I'm skipping
shut 'em
them.
out?
I'm so concerned about getting done. Public comment, my apologies. Courtesy of the floor. Anybody want to talk? Mike? I did that twice in a row. It's 2 meetings in a row.
Sure. First, I want to thank the township for completing the park. Scott, you guys did a great job putting that all together. Ryan, thank you very much. Just opened up today, and kids are all looking forward to that. So great. Second thing is there were several other questions that we had raised last meeting that still need to be discussed and followed up on. One was the deed restriction. Okay.
I can answer that.
Okay.
I did go back and look at the deed that was recorded in 2013 and kind of brushed off my memory a little bit. And at that point in time, the language that's at issue with the deed reads that the park shall be used exclusively for public use, primarily for all the residents of the subdivisions known as Caybrook Manor and Green Hills and surrounding areas as one, a public park, or two, an outdoor recreation center, including but not limited to a playground, swimming pool, in order to promote and develop physical fitness and educate people in need thereof. The only structures would be incidental to that use. In looking at what's going on there and observing the park personally, it's still a public park. There's soccer fields there. There's the new recreation play structures are installed, so it's still used for the public. It's open to the public. My concerns back in 2013 was there's contemplation of having that conveyed to the Caybrook Green Hills Swim Club, which is a private entity, and that's where my concerns arose from. The deed doesn't define whether it needs to promote passive or active recreation, and staff and I looked at this, and the rain garden would provide passive recreation areas, wildlife, walking, possible relaxation. They could put an educational component in there to have a sign, educating the public what it is and what the purposes of this rain garden are for. And that rain garden is incidental to the overall park. It's still open. Staff again researched the issue, and it's they found a lot of state and federal agencies and associations consider passive recreation to be an integral part of overall recreation. So I don't have concerns with the installation of the rain garden as an incidental part of that public park.
Okay, well, I guess that's a matter of your opinion. I think there'd be others that say that we've lost 1/3 of the area of the park, and as a result, I guess it's recreation. We can chase mosquitoes or whatever, but it doesn't seem that it really follows through on what the intent of the deed restriction was.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know how we resolve that. The other question about the standing water sounds like it's being addressed. Thank you very much. That's a big concern. There's also a concern raised about the location of the soccer goal compared to the retention pond or rain garden, and preventing any soccer balls. Kids at that age miss the goal more than they make it in. Okay, so there's still a safety concern that was brought up. I don't know whether, maybe we could even use some of the boulders at Grange Park to line that back.
Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, or Bob, I think there is a plan to put some shrubs or some bushes to protect the rain garden from the soccer balls. It just hasn't been done yet.
Okay, great.
But I think the rocks would be a danger. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And then what about the head wall for the, is that going in for the, with the new pipe? Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Yes, it's greened up a lot. It looks a lot better than it did with the dirt before. I got the information on the public notice. Not very well. When you go back and you look at it, there's no mention of a rain garden going in at Russet Road Park in any of the notes. It talks about an MS4 presentation, but that presentation wasn't provided. And we don't know what the other options were at that particular point that were pursued. That was also a question that we raised.
That was also in that report you got.
In that report, I saw the report. It actually goes through and justifies why that rain garden will satisfy the sediment load that was, but it doesn't talk about other potential options.
That would have to come from the engineer's office. And the designer.
They should have a record of that. Antec.
It was MTech that did it?
Yeah, Antec did that.
I don't know what we can do about it.
In the
It-
MS4.
So
For the whole.
I'll be honest with you guys, okay? It was a big surprise to the residents there.
So and I want to say something. When you spoke last time, Scotty and I went out that weekend, and I went down and I viewed what you saw, and I understand your concern. And I did ask a lot of questions. That's something that had to be done, and I'm understanding we were out of options. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
So, and if you do look at other parks, there is a stormwater element to it. Even in the presentation, I did see that. But I know that doesn't make you feel any better because honestly, I get it. You prefer not to have it. I mean, the only thing I can suggest is if there's anything we can do to make it look nicer, so that it's at least aesthetically pleasing. I think we've done a lot there. We're putting the shrubbery in. I think that I haven't seen it since it's greened up. But I'm trying to be pragmatic here. I don't know if there's any real options other than try to make it better than what so that you can kind of.
So I'm not asking you to fill it back in.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay?
I think that's
So
where we're
let's-
at, you know?
Let's just
Yeah.
take that off the table. I don't think that's the appropriate thing. I think we have to make sure that we, address the particular standing water, the soccer balls going into the.
Yep. And we're taking as much of a collaborative approach with you and your fellow
Okay,
residents as
great.
we can to make sure that it's as
And you mentioned Jim is going to coordinate with the other neighbors. You talked to Jim today?
for the trees. Because
For the trees.
he wants
Okay,
to build
What
stuff.
about the rest of the neighbors that are on the Russet Road and across the, you're just talking about the adjoining property owner?
Well, we're talking about putting, he's talking to the adjoining property owner to make sure that if we place trees in that area, that he still wants to maintain his view of the park and not have it
Right.
only trees. They're going to be, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, we're going to be putting some street trees back on Russet Road there. And that we're putting shrubs around to protect the soccer balls, and there's going to be some other plantings in and around mostly around the rain garden to make it look better. But once we get those put in, if there's some concerns, neighbors can reach out and we can see what we can do to
Okay,
continue
well,
collaborative conversation.
I think the issue is we're not asking you to fill it back in again, okay?
Right.
We want to work together.
Yep.
As a collaborative approach to try to, reach a good solution. I think you're going to need to reach out more than just Saco, and the other neighbor is not there, so they're not. Shirley Roth just went into the old age home, so she's not going to be as concerned. But there will be some other people.
I don't mean to laugh at that, but that made me chuckle. I apologize.
all right.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Any other public comment? Paul, are you rising for comment here?
Good evening. It was good to hear that their street trees are going to be replaced along Russet Road. And I was wondering when, ballpark, what season and year that's anticipated to happen. Okay.
That's why I reached out to Saco with it both next month.
Okay, thank you very much. As Scotty noted, the street trees that exist in the park, are really at the end of their functional life. Unfortunately, most of them. And so there's been a lot of blowdowns over the years, and it would be good to see the streetscape, brought back to the rest of the neighborhood. Thank you.
For the record, that was Paul McNamara of Upper Macungie Township.
No, but just Mike and Paul, it's probably a good reminder because of the presentation earlier today. Like anything you think you want in your park now, 5 years from now or 10 years from now, now's the time to get engaged and start bringing that to that steering committee. Well, you're on the steering
He's on the steering committee.
But yeah, now's the time to bring that up. Okay.
Any other public comment? So my hour and 19-minute meeting turned into an hour and 28-minute meeting, but I'm still pretty happy with that. I will make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
You want to leave?
Nay, no.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Just so used to put
The
it in
answer is
there.
no.
I have to use the restroom. Let him do first.